Hello friends, how are you doing today? I'm doing okay. This video is going to be very different. You're going to get to see the psychologist side of me, but I think this is a pretty important video. Last year I kept a list of all of the videos that I wanted to make, and I never got around to this side of it. There was a few videos that I talked about the psychology, but what I really wanted to do was get down and dirty with, this small business stuff. And so this year, I thought, you know what? Let's do it. You've heard me say it before, that psychology students, when we graduate, we're not pushed into this psychological world, therapy, social work, and things like that. That's not something that we're pushed into very often anymore. Now, they're being, and I was too, they're being approached by corporations and famous and even not so famous brands to become part of their marketing departments. And the reason why is because, and they've learned this in the last 25 years or so, that psychologists understand human behavior much better than any marketer or advertiser. Okay, so what they've done is they have incorporated psychology into their marketing and advertising, and it's definitely brought them a lot of good results. So what I want to get into today is appropriately titled The Psychology of Persuasion. Now, the title of this video is actually the title of a book, okay? And this is a very interesting book. This book can explain to you the behaviors of brands and companies and how they use psychology on us as a consumer, okay? Now, first, let me put out a disclaimer. This is not towards any brand, and it's not towards essentially the detailing industry. Although, what I want you to understand is if you're a small detailing business, some of these things could come in handy for you in your business. However, all I ask is that you use it ethically, okay? Because there is a fine line between ethical and unethical, okay? So I want to make sure I put that out there. But this is not towards any brand or anything like this. There's also been a lot of talk on a few of my lives that, there's kind of an addiction going on in the industry. I'm not really focusing on the addiction, so to speak, but what I do want to do is with this, because all of the information is all in one. What I do want to do is make sure that I put it out there, because this will help some of those people maybe who are like, why, maybe it'll help them to understand why they do what they do. I call it an addiction. Shopping addictions are very real, and, people put themselves into bankruptcy because of it. A lot of self-destructive things can happen. It's not much different from a drug addiction, okay? It is an addiction, and it can harm you emotionally and mentally, and it can also affect your families. So maybe some of this will help you to understand some of that as well. But this is not towards any one company or any one brand. This is just because these kinds of things are used all across every industry you can possibly think of. The goal here is for you to understand the principles in all of this, the theories in all of this used by companies and brands, and it also will help you to understand a little bit about the consumer side of it. Everything that I'm going to discuss is on the internet. You can go find it. I learned it in class, but you can go find it. It is very easy, and I will put my resources up at the end of the video. And I might even just incorporate them in the middle. So anyway, I'm excited to get started with this one. I've been wanting to bring this kind of content because I think it would help us. And I have some other ideas of things that I can bring as well. And I think this will just kind of help you understand some of the outside stuff. The psychology of persuasion. Now, what that is psychology used in advertising and marketing. So, what is persuasion? Well, let's look at that first and foremost. Persuasion is the process of influencing someone's attitudes, beliefs, and or behaviors. What that means is, okay, so I'll use a detailing example since we're all detailers. So the latest and greatest wheel and tire cleaner, if they continue to show it, influence you, influence your attitude, it falls right there with, what they said falls right into your beliefs, and it triggers that behavior. I gotta have it. Okay, so I'm gonna go over a few models and theories. And what these are gonna do is basically show you the principles of persuasion, okay, that are used in multiple different ways, but there's a few different models and theories that are predominantly used. So let's start with Robert Cialdini. It was a PhD, and he is also the author of the book Influence, the Psychology of Persuasion. Now, you can get this book on Amazon. It's only $20, but it is definitely worth the read, especially if you are going to have a small business. And even if it's just you alone and you are detailing mobile out there, okay, you're still a business. So this information could be helpful to you in this book. But let's go over his 6 principles of persuasion, because they're definitely interesting. Okay, I got my notes here. Are you ready? Let's do it. Number 1 is reciprocity. People feel obliged to return favors. In marketing, free samples, free trials, and giveaways leverage this principle. Number 2, commitment and consistency. People like to act in ways consistent with their past actions or statements. Marketers use this by getting small commitments, such as signing up for newsletters, giving away gift cards, things like that. So number 3 is social proof. People look to others to determine what's correct. And we know that for a fact. For example, what's the best example I can come up with? I know. How many times has somebody said to you that they completely and fully trust Ivan LaCroix with DIY Detail because he's been doing this for 45 years? That would be an example of looking up to, okay? So just trying to keep it within the detailing industry, that would be one example. People look to others to determine what's correct. Testimonials, reviews, and influencer endorsements rely on this. So, for example, like I said, I want to stay within the detailing industry so somebody completely understands. DIY Detail starts a brand, okay? And they reach out and give products to Pan the organizer, okay? That would be the use of influencers to rely on this. No offense to DIY Detail or Pan, I just was trying to make a point. That would be your social proof. So the next one is authority. People trust experts or authoritative figures. Ads will often feature ads like, especially those medication ads, doctors or scientists or even celebrities and influencers to build credibility. I mean, if they've got a brand deal with somebody, you know, the influencer is well aware of what they're getting into. Okay, this is not just a brand taking advantage of somebody. They're literally entering into a contract with someone in order to build this credibility. Okay, so, and then the authority that I was talking about is Ivan. Been in the business for 45 years plus probably now, and a lot of people look up to him because he is an authority in the industry. Okay, so the next one is liking. People are more easily persuaded by people they like. Brands build likability through relatable messaging, humor, and attractive spokespeople. Now, that is no joke. In the world of social media, when it comes to YouTubers and influencers on Instagram, influencers on TikTok, it's the pretty people that are the most successful. Because we as people up here, we gravitate towards people that we are okay looking at. Attractiveness takes first place. Personality takes second place. If you are not a pretty people, you have to be entertaining. Otherwise, you're not worth anybody's time. Okay? So that is a big thing. And humor is definitely something that will influence a lot of people to stick around. Okay, so the last one in Dr. Cialdini's book is scarcity. What does that mean? People value things more when they perceive them as scarce. For example, limited time offers or exclusive products use this principle. I have a leather coating that Diamond Protect sent me to give a try. Once I opened that product and did my dad's car, well, now that left me with a bottle that's been unused. What am I going to do with it? So I offered it limited time only to my customer base so that if it's something that they're interested in, you know, I would give them a discounted rate. The goal is not to waste any of the leather coating, okay? So that's where I might use that influence because I just want to make sure the coating gets used, but I'm giving a pretty big discount to somebody so that I can use it. So it's the scarcity there, okay? So those are the 6 principles of this book by Dr. Cialdini. Now, like I said, I don't want anybody to think that this is directed towards any brand. It's not. It just gives you an idea of what the brands and the companies do, okay? It's normal practice. It is, and of course, as I said, there's a fine line between ethical and unethical. And that is where your antitrust and things like that come into play. So, but I do suggest that you take a minute or take a week to read his book. Definitely worth it. I checked it out from the library, but it is definitely worth it. Okay, so the next model that I want to talk about is the elaboration likelihood model. Now, what this talks about is the two routes that people are motivated by. Okay, so the first one is the central route. When people are motivated and are able to think critically, they are persuaded by logical arguments and evidence. Okay, so in the detailing industry, how would I use that? Okay, so say that a brand showcased one of their products, and the product was able to remove water spots, and that detailer knew that this was something, and they critically thought through the video. As long as all of the information was in the video, they thought through it. Now, here's the other side of that. The peripheral route. When people are less motivated or unable to think deeply, they are influenced by superficial cues such as attractiveness, emotions, or brand reputation. Now, we just discussed the attractiveness. A lot of times, let me use John as an example. Okay, John is 404 Not Found on YouTube. He's one of my viewers and subscribers. And he is a DIY detail fanatic. Okay? And he has been dying for these polishers, the new polishers that are coming out. And every single time he sees a video or a comment about them, and he will even in my lives, he'll just say, have you guys checked it out? Did you get to, Humberto went to MTE, and he's first question he asked Humberto, did you get to try out the new polisher? And that's the emotional side of it. So we talked about the attractiveness, and then we talked about the emotions. The reputations of the brands have to be built by the brand. They'll either come out on the other side with a good reputation or they won't. So, but either way, that is up to the brand and how loyal their consumers are. So those are the two routes that motivate people. Okay, you've got the critically thinking and you've got the not so critically thinking and the superficial side of it. Okay, so there is another theory by Leon Festinger, and it's called the cognitive dissonance theory. All right, and it suggests that people experience discomfort when their beliefs and behaviors are inconsistent. Marketers often create ads that resolve this dissonance, such as, you deserve this luxury product because you work hard. That's where kind of a fine line comes in, where you have ethical and unethical. It's a very fine line. Everybody works hard, okay? But should somebody with a $75,000 a year salary go out and buy a $100,000 Tesla truck, Cybertruck, whatever they are called? No. Because all you're going to do is, it's going to be destructive to you. So what you're going to do is put yourself into bankruptcy, and you're going to eventually lose that Cybertruck. You might, because car makers just seem to toss out the loans. They got to have the sales, so or the car companies, so they may give you the loan to buy that cool little Cybertruck, but your income can't handle it. And a lot of times we have a lot of irresponsible lending going out there. So it becomes destructive. So that is something that this theory suggests. And I do think that every consumer should take that into consideration. At least get to know what actually happened there. You can want a Tesla Cybertruck, but if you don't have the income to pay for that, you probably better pass it up and just buy you a Ford or a Chevy. That's just the facts. Those are the 3 different models and theories that I wanted to talk about. There's a few other models, but I'm not going to include them in this. What I want to do is try to keep this as short as possible, but make sure that I'm putting the information out there. Now, what I want to talk about is the psychology in advertising. Now, what that is advertising leverages psychological principles to capture attention, evoke emotions, and drive actions. So we'll talk about some of these points. Now, what I'm getting ready to get into is where the psychology students come into play. Because now they've been educated on human behavior and things like that. So these things are what is considered, which one is it, ethical or is it unethical? Could it cross the line? It would never cross the line. I mean, there's all kinds of questions in there. So let's talk about the psychology in advertising. Emotional appeals. Ads often target emotions like happiness, fear, nostalgia, or excitement to create a connection with the audience. For example, insurance ads use fear to highlight risks, while Coca-Cola ads evoke happiness and togetherness. And even Budweiser ads at the Super Bowl with their Clydesdales and the stories behind them. You know, it's the emotional appeals. And especially if these brands are going to use animals in their ads, that is going to appeal to animal lovers. It doesn't matter what the animal is. Okay? So, the next point in the psychology in advertising. Storytelling. Stories are memorable and engaging. Brands use narratives to create emotional connections and make their message relatable. For example, Nike ads often tell stories of perseverance and triumph. And these kinds of things appeal to that emotional side. And, you know, so it pulls people in. There's a reason Nike blew up to be this massive brand. Okay? There's a reason for that. So the next one is anchoring and framing. Now, anchoring. People rely heavily on the first piece of information they receive. For example, showing a high original price next to a discounted price. Now, the first part of that anchoring is absolutely true. On the mental health side, there is a personality called the neurotic personality. They are very well aware, and they are going to do what they have to do to make sure when they have a problem with somebody else, whether it be, okay, let's say it's a coworker. So say they had a big blowout with a coworker, all right? They need to get to the boss first They need to make sure the boss hears their story first. The first one who gets there is usually going to influence the boss 99% of the time. So the first bit of information that we typically receive is typically the bit of information that influences us. And now we have the framing. Framing, the way information is presented, influences decisions. For example, 90% fat-free versus 10% fat. Okay? Wordplay. Wordplay. That is all that is. And psychologists come up with that wordplay for you so they can put that on the labels. You know, so then when you see it at the grocery store, you're like, oh, I weigh too much. I need that fat-free. That is what framing is all about. It's the perception that somebody sees. Let's get to the next one. Color psychology. Colors evoke specific emotions and associations. For example, red. Red evokes the specific emotions such as excitement or urgency. I just put up that limited time offer, and I used those siren lights on the post. I have no idea why. I'm just going through and saw it, so I decided to use it. But then when I think about it, yeah, it kind of gives off the impression that it is urgent. And it is. I have to use that leather coating up. So, blue. It evokes trust and calm. And this is typically used by banks and tech companies. So, colors mean everything. And then there's green. And that evokes this natural and this health feeling. Okay? And that's typically used by organic brands. The power of repetition. Repeated exposure to a message increases familiarity and liking, the mere exposure effect. Brands use jingles and slogans and repeated ads to build recognition. I can't tell you, okay, let's go back to DIY detail. Every single time that the ads come onto my YouTube, you know, when I'm watching a video, it doesn't matter if I'm watching a video on a podcast, on a news podcast or something like that. When the ad pops up for me, and this is for all of them, it's going to be DIY detail every single time. And sometimes you wonder, is that all they do is put ads out? But, you know, that's all part of marketing. They have a business to run and they've got to market it. So that's how they're doing it. Now, on Facebook, you see ads, but it's usually, or the ones that I seem to be getting are the medication ones. And I think a lot of that is because my Facebook is, a lot of my friends on Facebook are childhood cancer families. So it might have something to do with that. I don't know if the algorithm is doing that or what, but yeah, it influences, it will, the brands, their jingles and their slogans will influence you. Where's the beef from back in the day? Okay, so think of your favorite company and the slogans that they've used. And if you want to have a slogan in your detailing business, maybe now is a good time for you to sit down and kind of brainstorm some of that. Or if you don't have a way to brainstorm it, You can go to Chat GPT, you can go to Grok, you can go to Gemini, or you can go to DeepSeek, and you can even go to Meta AI, and you can put in there brainstorming on coming up with the slogan. I'm not kidding. A slogan makes a lot of difference. So we just finished up going over the advertising. But do you understand the difference between the advertising side and the marketing side? This side can't work without the other. Before you can advertise, you have to understand your market. You have to identify your market. Okay? A lot of people don't understand that, but that's where psychologists come into play. Psychologists come into play because they can understand human behavior. And because they understand human behavior, it gives them the advantage to knowing how a majority of their market is going to make decisions. It is also, they understand that a majority of the market is like, oh my God, I gotta have it. Gotta have it. Especially if their obsession, or I say it loosely, passion, because sometimes a passion is claimed, but it's really an obsession. But they've got to have those new products, that latest and greatest products. When you have a small detailing business, even if you want to stay by yourself, you still have to identify your market. Okay? Now, obviously, you're not going to be able to afford to go and hire a psychologist to understand why a human behaves that way, how they behave, the impulsive behaviors of them, the addictions that come with buying products and things like that. They also take a deeper dive and look into, say, let's stay in the detailing industry. How many of you are obsessed with the foam? So if their product produces a ton of foam, when you stick in that foam cannon and aim it towards that car and start to lather it on, you're just going to grab a hold of them. Okay? That's one way. One thing that annoys me the most is when YouTubers or other detailers in comments on Facebook and Instagram and even TikTok, they tell you what you're supposed to price your stuff, your detailing service, okay? And they're half a world away in North Carolina, and you're over here in Nevada, and two totally different costs of living, things are different. And so what happens is, if you take that advice, you potentially could price yourself out of a job when all you wanted to do was detail. But what it also does is, when we say we've got to put this really high price on our detailing services, so what we're doing is we're saying that our market is the top 10%. The top 10% are the only ones with disposable income. So what happens there? Well, now you've got 100,000 detailers catering to the top 10%. Well, eventually, you've got too many detailers, and not everybody with the disposable income is interested in a detail. They can do that themselves. That might be something they want to do in their driveway on the weekends. Hence DIY detail. Their market is, not only to the detailers, but to the DIYers. What if you step back like I did last year? You step back and you start looking at your market. I didn't want to cater to the top 10%. The people, and I'm older, so the people that I know are people that are on fixed incomes, okay? The people in my circle are just regular people, but they don't make a lot of money, okay? So I restructured everything and I decided to bring, just kind of bring down my prices so that I catered to the largest economic class in the United States. Because what was happening, and I've seen it over and over and over again, detailers are pricing themselves out of the largest economic class in the United States. Okay, so they don't have the biggest amount of disposable income. The other misconception is that a majority of those cars, the drivers don't care about them, and when you get them into your shop, they're gonna be trashed. Maybe the back seat is where all the kids are. But when you look at the driver's side, it's not trashed. And I wouldn't even say that it's trashed when they're just carting the kids around. I mean, most of the vehicles you're going to get are going to be relatively clean. The most you're going to have to deal with is cleaning up after the kids. But that, mom just didn't have time to do it. So why isn't the industry coming back down to earth and saying, you know what? There's a whole new market there that's way larger than that top 10%. I can offer a $99 detail, have it done in 2 or 3 hours. All I have to do is learn how to tweak my detailing. It's all about discovering and identifying who your market is. Because if you don't know who your market is, you can't advertise to them. So let's look at the psychology in marketing. If you identify your market, then you can advertise to them. Now, the psychology in marketing is marketing strategies are deeply rooted in understanding consumer behavior and decision-making processes. So the marketer finds the market. And you can be a marketer too. You just have to understand a little bit about your customer base. You have to create your customer base. If you want to be in business as a detailer, you have to be able to create your customer base. Carlos Serrano goes live on Instagram and his YouTube. I cannot tell you how many times somebody has asked him, how does he advertise? How does he advertise? How does he advertise? And that's why you're getting a video like this. Because you can advertise all day long. But what good does it do you when you don't understand and identify or even know how to identify your market? Okay? So I hope this makes sense. So the first principle, loss aversion. People prefer avoiding losses over acquiring gains. For example, free trials or money-back guarantees tap into this. In the psychology of marketing, you have to understand that you're taking your product to your market, okay? Your market of people. And what you want to do is you need to understand that they don't want the loss. They want the gain. So in the world of detailing, say you're going to do an interior detail and you're going to offer a rinseless wash for free. And you're going to run this special for 30 days. That's a huge gain to them. Okay? Especially if you understand how to explain it to them. If you have taken the time to write down or properly prepare your communication of this particular service, this to them is going to be a gain. They don't have to pay for you to wash the outside of their car. You could even offer the foam wash. You could do the foam wash and offer free protection, free 1-year protection. They want the gain. They don't want the loss. They want the gain. If they are only asking you to detail the interior and they paid you $250 for you to do that interior, they're gaining a clean car, but they don't see it that way. They're actually losing $250. That's what they see. That's where you have to make it worth their while, if that makes any sense. Okay, so the next one is choice architecture. How options are presented influences decisions. Decoy pricing to make a product seem more attractive. What is the most perfect example of this in advertising? The marketers figured it out long ago. The customers still haven't figured it out, the consumers, but I don't think they ever will. Black Friday. They will literally jack up that price 25%, put that jacked up price up, put a big red stripe through it or a slash, and then they will bring it down to exactly the price it was before. Neuromarketing. That's a big word. This neuromarketing is it's something that they do in their R&D, research and development. Okay, in the marketing departments. They look at, and they do some crazy stuff too, let me tell you. This field uses neuroscience to study how consumers' brains respond to marketing stimuli. That's not a joke. That actually happens. Techniques will include EEGs, eye tracking, eye tracking to measure attention and emotional engagement when presented with certain products and things like that. I'm not kidding. There's all kinds of R&D that goes into this. Okay, they are going to refine you, and they got y'all pegged. Just saying. They got everybody pegged. They don't really have me pegged. Only thing I ever buy is what I need. I am not a shopper by any means. I will order my Walmart stuff online because I cannot stand going shopping. I hate it. Online grocery shopping was the best thing that ever happened to me. Just saying. So the next one is the role of identity and self-concept. People buy products that align with their self-image or aspirations. Luxury brands, for example, sell status and exclusivity. Most people wouldn't think they'd be able to have a Tesla. The reason why is because they could never afford it. There's other people out there that are like, I don't want anything to do with EVs. So they're like, no, I don't care who makes it. I'm not going to get it, you know. But it is still considered a luxury brand because of its high price. So the next one is scarcity and urgency. Limited time offers, flash sales, and countdown timers create a sense of urgency, promoting quicker decisions. Now, the psychology behind that, if they can push you to make quicker decisions, you will impulsively buy it, whether you need it or not. And this is something that fuels some of the addiction that I was talking about earlier. It's frustrating when you look at people who are just hell-bent on getting their hands on the latest, greatest product. And it is what it is, but the quicker you can push people to buy, the better. Because impulse usually wins out on that war. They don't stop and think, do I really need that? If they give the impression that it's a limited time offer or it's never going to be that cheap again. Okay? So the next one and the last one is personalization. Tailoring messages to individual preferences increases engagement. Data-driven marketing uses consumer behavior to deliver personalized recommendations. That's not the only thing. That AI on Facebook and Instagram, YouTube, man, they got us pegged. And it doesn't help that these phones are adding to it, because you know these phones are listening to you. If I'm talking to Deidre, my bestie, about a frickin' toaster or a stove, or even my daughter about a vacuum, and that stuff pops up, so they're starting to use AI to do that too. Just saying, it's not just people. With everything that I just went over and talked about, there is one final thing that we do need to discuss. I do need to put it out there. I said earlier, all I ask is that you keep it ethical. When you identify your market and you figure that out, then you figure out how to advertise to that market, and you understand everything that they do in order to bring you the consumer in, then you have to take into consideration the ethical and unethical practices of that. There are 3 principles that if you're going to have advertise to your market, once you identify them, there are 3 principles that you need to, as a business, take into consideration. This is going to help build reputation. It is also going to set you apart from others. And if you take these 3 principles into consideration and look at them as if you are your own consumer, then you should be okay. So, number 1 is manipulation. When does persuasion become manipulation? And that is a question you have to keep in mind. The next one is transparency. Are consumers aware of how their data is being used for personalized data? You know, like I just spoke about, the AI. And then the other is exploitation. Are vulnerable populations, such as children, being targeted unfairly? Now we're going to talk about some of the applications in modern marketing. Now, you already know this. However, or should I say, you already know the first one. However, the others, well, let's just talk about it. So the first one is social media marketing. Platforms like Instagram, TikTok, Facebook, and even YouTube use social proof and influencer marketing to drive engagement. So the next one is gamification. Now this is adding game-like elements, rewards or challenges to marketing, increasing their participation and loyalty. The next one is AI and personalization, which we just talked about. Algorithms analyze consumer behavior to deliver hyper-targeted ads. I still say they're listening on the phone. Let me give you 2 books that you can go to the library and check them out, okay, and read through them. And one is going to help you understand the psychology of persuasion, the psychology in advertising and marketing. And that is the Robert Cialdini book, Influence, Psychology of Persuasion. It is a great book. I had to read it in college, but if you're in business, this is a really good book to have. That's really on the advertising side, but it helps you to understand the psychology of all of that. And then the other book that I would suggest is called Thinking Fast and Slow. And that's by Daniel Kahneman. And this will help you understand decision-making and biases. And when you understand that, then you can create your market, okay? And then as you begin to build a customer base, it's all going to make sense. But I think those are 2 books that would be great for you to read. Now, I do want to say there's a couple of research papers that like I said, one of them is really long, and I had to read it when I was in college. And there is a ton of research papers out there. But the 2, I will link them in the description box. The 2 that were big in my schooling is the Journal of Consumer Psychology. Okay, so that is one. And the other one is Psychology and Marketing. And like I said, they're research papers and they're very well written. They are long, but I think it would be worth your time to read it. I'm just saying, I think it would be worth your time. So now that we've covered the psychology of persuasion, I'm going to leave it there. I think that everybody got the gist of it. I hope. I was not trying to disrespect any brands. I was just using brands and people as an example. But I do hope that this helps you understand the brands have to create their market. But if you want to be in business as a detailer, you have to create your market. And once you create and identify your market, then you can begin to advertise to that market. And that's what the brands do. So it falls all over the industry. These are things you can use. This is information you can read, and maybe you can apply that to your business, or you would understand better how the brands work. Not all of them brands are they're small. So they may not get into all that psychology stuff. But in the end, they've figured out how to master it. And they may not be directly using the psychology of it, but they are. They've just kind of figured it out. All right. So, like I said, I hope you all enjoyed this. I wanted to bring this. I thought that it was a really good topic to discuss. It also didn't help that a few people said in the comments when I would mention it that it's BS. It is not BS. It is right out there on the internet. I had to learn it in college. If I wanted to get my associate's degree, I had to learn it. And I also think that these things can be helpful to you in your business. So, I hope you all have a wonderful, wonderful day. And until the next video, who knows when that'll be. Take care of yourselves. Good luck in your businesses. Good luck to the brands. And we'll see you on the next one. Peace.